Hi guys, through the Bible with Philippine Bible Ministry. Dave Pence in here. I'm going to continue this little path here through the Bible, at least through the Book of Genesis. We'll see. We'll see. It's all based on the response. If I get 3 or 4 people, I probably will stop. If I get 7 or 8 people, I'll probably keep going. That's the difference. I don't know. I just pray about everything, and if I feel like I'm touching one life, then I keep going. It's kind of hard because people are pretty quiet when they watch videos. It's you would be amazed how rare it is for someone to just click that like button and subscribe. I have not. My subscriptions have not gone up in a long time. I was for anyway. That's another story. It's God's my algorithm, and I let Him decide. But every now and then, I want to complain about it because I'm a baby. I want to say, Lord, can we just go past 240 something? Because it's been stuck there for months, and it's like, okay, maybe not. So 240 subscribers. It's the whole media thing. I don't understand. I don't try to understand. And we're not paying anyone to do it for us. If you'd like to volunteer, you know how algorithms work. I'd be more than happy to accept your help. Otherwise, God's my algorithm, and here we go. And we are a ministry of the small, and I love it that way because that's how God turned the world around. 120 people in the upper room. That's how we started our church, meaning the body of Christ. God bless you guys. So today we're talking about Joseph and his brothers reunited, and we're almost to the end of Genesis because once we get past Joseph, that's it. And then we hopefully will go into Exodus because that's an amazing story about Moses, right? Exodus is amazing stuff going on. Okay, so I think we finished the story where Joseph became the ruler, the second ruler, and he got all the Pharaoh was able to get everything from all the people, right? And everybody came to him for food. And the famine it wasn't just the famine in Egypt, it was also in Canaan where Jacob, Israel lived with his family. And they were very hungry, and they heard that there was somebody in Egypt that they have grain in Egypt, let's go get some. So they sent the kids out. He sent his sons out. They're not kids. 42, Genesis 42. Jacob saw there was grain in Egypt, and he said to his sons, go look. What are you doing? What are you sitting there for? Go. Let's go. Let's go get some of that, right? So this is a interesting story. So they show up, right? They show up, and then Joseph, Joseph recognizes them, but he doesn't tell them who he is. So they bow down to Joseph and they say, we're just here to buy some grain. Thank you so much. Where are you guys from? He says, oh, we're from Canaan. So he recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Or in Genesis 42, verse 8. So Joseph recognized them. And Joseph remembered the dreams, what he had about them bowing down to him. So it already happened. So there it is. Already the first part about the sheaves already happened, right? And then Joseph says to them, you're spies. I know you guys. I don't know. You're lying. You come to spy out the land. You're going to bring an army in here and blah 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 blah. He's just messing with them. He's testing them. Joseph is testing them. He doesn't say, "Oh, my brothers. Oh, it's okay." No, no. He's probably a little upset about what happened. They're sold into slavery. They almost killed him. Instead, they sold him into slavery. And look at any separated from his father and his mom and everything. Look at all the horrors that he went through. Right. Hmm. I guess his mom was already dead. Yeah. Never mind. Another. There we go. So he starts messing with him. He says, "You guys are spies. This and that and the other. We're not spies. We just came to okay." So he gave him the stuff, and he says, "Here's what happens. Your servants are 12 brothers from the land of Canaan. In fact, our youngest is with our father." So they came and they left Benjamin, right? And Joseph said to them, "It is that you are spies." So he goes, I will test you in this matter. He goes, leave one of your leave. He goes, by the life of Pharaoh, you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. So one of them stays. One of them stays as a prisoner, and the rest go back. And they tell the father what happened. And he tells them, don't come back here unless you bring Benjamin with you. I want all you guys here. Prove to me you're not spies. Okay. So they gave him food, right? And then when they left, all the money was back in their sacks. He had his guys put the money back in their bags with the grain. So when they saw that, they were very concerned. They said, look what happened. Look what happened. Oh my gosh. And they start wondering. I wonder if this is God's paying us back for what we did to our brother. Because they assume he's dead or whatever, right? I wonder if God's paying us back for that, because that was pretty evil what we did. That was pretty terrible what we did. We totally regret. Have you ever done anything in your life you really regretted for years and years and years? Now, luckily, God forgives us, but sometimes the regret's still there because you still see the scar tissue in your life, in the lives of those you loved or love. I see that in my life. So what happens? So they go away, and then eventually they run out of food because they don't want to go back. The father says, "You're not taking Benjamin. I already lost one son," because he thinks Joseph is dead. Remember? So they wait until they run out of food, and now they're going to starve. And so they go, "Okay, go back, take double the portion of money." Tell him what happened, and here, take him some dates and nuts and figs, whatever it was. Take him some special treasures, maybe that will soften his heart. And I guess then we have to take our brother, and well, you can't take him. And then I think Judah steps up and says, I will promise you that he will come back, or else I will stay. I will give my life for your youngest, because he already felt pretty bad about what happened, right? It was Judah that said that. So they go back. Joseph's brothers return with Benjamin, right? But Judah had spoken to them, saying, "You shall not see my face unless your brother is with me." So yeah, I was right. So Judah was the one who says he promised that he would make sure the brother comes back. So they go back, right? So let's just see if we. I want to get the story right. I don't want to just tell. I do have the story memorized, but I just want to make sure. It says, then Judah said to Israel, his fathers. Oh, send the lad with me. I already said that part. And he said, okay, go ahead, but make sure you come back. May God Almighty give you mercy before that man, that he may release your other brother and Benjamin. If I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So we're going to starve to death. I guess you're going to have to take my youngest son. So they took a present, which was like figs and pistachio nuts and spices and honey and myrrh. They took a double portion of the money because they had the money back, right? And then they went in, and then Joseph said, "These men will come dine with me at noon, right? Have these men come in at noon, and so we'll bring the brother out that's been. And by the way, he didn't suffer in prison; he was well taken care of. He said, "We'll have the brother come out." And he says, now the men were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house, and they said, "It's because of the money which was returned in our sacks. He thinks we stole the money." And when they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house and talked with him, they said, "Sir, we indeed came down the first time, but it happened when we came back that we found the money in our sacks. We didn't steal it. I don't know how it got in there." And then the steward he said, "Peace to you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your fathers has given you your money, because I've got it." So he lied to him. It was part of the test. Like, no, don't worry, we got your money. I don't know what happened. Maybe God just put money in your sack. Yay, right? So they're like, okay. So the man brought them in into Joseph's house. We're in Genesis 43, verse 24. The man brought them into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet. So in other words, they washed up, and he gave them feed for their donkeys. They took care of them, and then they set him down. And then Joseph came in, and they brought the present before him, and they bowed down before him. And then he asked them about their well being and about their father. How is the old man? Is he still alive? Oh yeah, he's still alive. He's over there. He's still alive. Yeah. He lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, and he says, "Oh, is this your younger brother?" So that's his brother. Remember, Rachel had two sons. I'm gonna do a video on those two in a minute. It's very important. It's really cool. The two sons of Rachel. Then he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and he said, "Is this your youngest brother?" And he says, "Oh yeah." And he goes, but he says, now when he saw him, his heart was yearning for Benjamin. He wanted to go up and hug him, but he's playing this thing out. He wants to see how this thing. He's testing the heart of his brothers. He's wanting to see if they're like, yeah, we did that. We hate Joseph, but he wants to see if they've learned anything, right? So then when he washed and he wept. So he couldn't handle it. So he went in the other room and he cried and he washed his face and he went back in. And then he set them in birth order, and they marveled. So Benjamin, then all the brothers all the way up to Reuben. He set them in birth order, and they said, "How does he know this?" They were already afraid of him. This man knows too much. He's got a connection. Who is this guy, right? And then he gave Benjamin 5 times as much as his brothers. And once again, they marveled. Why did Benjamin get more food than us? And why is he treating Benjamin with special? What is going on? So, chapter 44. And then Joseph had a plan. He says, okay, go away. And then he told his steward to put his special golden, he had a special cup. I don't know. He told him it was for divination. It wasn't. He was just special. So he had a special cup, but he put it in the sack of, of Benjamin, I believe. Yeah. And then so when they left, they overtook them, and said, and listen to this. So when they had gone out of the city, they were not yet far off. So we're in 44 now. I don't know what verse 4. When they had gone out of the city, they were not far off. And then it says they were not far off. Joseph said to his steward, "Get up and follow the men, and when you overtake them, say, 'Why have you repaid evil for good? Is this not?'" He's talking about, why did you steal the cup from my lord? This is the cup that he uses to divination. This is the reason he knows all these things, because he's using divinity. He did this. They were just, once again, right? And then they say, "We didn't take it." But he says, "If you find the cup," he goes, "let him die." Because they didn't take it. And they said, "If you find a cup in any of these bags, if any of these grain, then whoever has it on their donkey, you go ahead and take that," because they were innocent, as far as they know. And they found it. Uh-oh. And they found it. And they found it in Benjamin. So then Benjamin Sacca, and then they tore their clothes. And they were very sad. And then they all went back to the city to see if they could talk to Joseph. So Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, and he was still there. "What deed is this you have done? Did you not know that I have practiced divination?" And they said, "What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? How can we clear ourselves?" "We didn't do it. God has found out the iniquity." So he says, what do they say? "God is punishing us for what we did to Joseph. We are convicted for what we did to Joseph. That was a terrible thing, and this is our punishment. He's going to destroy the family now because we did a horrible thing. God is not mocked." And they were feeling the full force of it, which was the whole plan of Joseph. He's a very wise man. And then Judah said, "I'll take his place. I'll take his place." And he says, "My Lord asks us," he says, "have you a father or brother?" And he says, we told our father the truth of who he was. And he goes, don't let him be the one to stay here, because he's already lost a son. If he loses another son, it will kill him. I cannot handle to see my father this way." And so it was. So he tells him the whole story. Well, we had to bring him back because, all that. And so he says, "Okay, but this is the story." And then he says, so he came with them. And then he says in chapter 45, because they were already saying, "This is because of the evil that we've done." And then Joseph could not restrain himself. Chapter 45. He couldn't restrain himself any longer. He told all the Egyptians to get out of the house. Go. Get away from the room anyway. So no one stood with him, and Joseph made himself known to his brothers, and he cried outside. He cried aloud. And the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said, "I am Joseph. Does my father still live?" And they couldn't believe it. So he told them all the stories of who he was, and then they believed it. "I am Joseph, your brother," he says. "For these 2 years the famine has been severe." So they still got 5 more years of famine. And he goes, I am Joseph. And so they wept and they held each other. And they said, "Will you not punish us?" He goes, "No, I will not punish you." And he says, "For you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." Because God used the pain and the sorrow and the suffering of Joseph to bring about salvation of life for all those Egyptians and a bunch of other people in the surrounding area. God used that situation, right? And he's going to use the situation to save their family too. And he says, "Bring your father back. Bring your father back. He can come stay here." And so he talks to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh goes, "Yeah, that's a good idea." So the father comes back. "My son is alive." So the father comes back, and just say, so Jacob goes into Israel, and Pharaoh gives them this whole land of Goshen right there. "You guys go in here, and you can bring your sheep." He says, and Joseph said, "Be sure to tell me you're a shepherd, because they don't like shepherds. They don't like sheep. They think they're gross, and so you can't eat with them. You can't be part of them. So tell them you're shepherds." So they gave him a separate land where they will multiply, and he brings them in, and Pharaoh honored the father, and he honored the family, and all of Egypt celebrated the return of his family. And then it says, and Israel became very old, and he's getting ready to die. He gets very old and he's getting ready to die. And he says, don't bury me here. Bury me over, I'm going to die. And so they come in, and at the very end of Genesis, he blesses all of his children. He blesses all the 12 sons, the 12 tribes. This is in Genesis chapter 48. And it says, it came to pass after these things. It came to pass after these things that Joseph brought his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, in. He brought his two sons in to be blessed by his father. And Israel said, who are these? And Joseph said, these are my sons. Please bring them to me. And the eyes of Israel were dim, so that he could not see. And Joseph brought him near him and kissed them and embraced them and said, Israel said to Joseph, I have not thought that I would see your face, but in fact now I also see your offspring. So he's very blessed. And Joseph brought them from beside his knees, and he bowed down with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left, and Manasseh with his right hand toward Israel's right. So it's very important. The right hand is the hand of power. Jesus is sitting at the right hand of the Father, right? So he put his right hand on Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh. So the left hand and the right hand, right? And he said, blessed be Joseph, and guided his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. His left hand on Manasseh, for Manasseh was the firstborn. Yeah, so I have to think this through because it always confuses me when I look in a mirror. So my left side, right here, and you are seeing it on my right side because it's a mirror. And this is my right side, but you're seeing it on my left side. So yeah, he's sitting at the right hand of God, isn't he? I'm so confused about that. I've lost my mind. Now I'm going to have to edit this and take all that confusion out so you guys know that I'm a really good Bible teacher. I get confused sometimes. The Bible can be a trickery for me sometimes. But anyway, so he blessed the wrong child, and he says, no, you got your hand on the wrong head. This is the youngest. Don't. But he blessed the youngest more than the oldest. Does this sound like a common theme? Right? And what about Jacob and Esau? Right? So the same thing. So he blesses the oldest more than the younger. Right? Now here's the thing about Ephraim and Manasseh, real quick. I'm not going to do all the blessings. I'm not going to do it all today. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. I don't know. I feel like I need to wrap this up right now. I just want you to know about Ephraim and Manasseh. So when you see the 12 tribes listed, a lot of times Levi is taken out, and Ephraim and Manasseh become the 11th and 12th instead of Joseph and Levi. Right? They'll take Levi out. Why? Because Levi doesn't. There's no land promises for Levi because Levi had God. They didn't have a possession of land. Right? Right? And sometimes you'll see other variations. There's one in Revelation where Dan is taken out. So it's still 12 tribes, but there's actually, if you count Ephraim and Manasseh, there's 13, right? So just something to think about. Ephraim and Manasseh are also Joseph, right? So that's it. So he blesses all of his sons. He blesses all of his sons. I'm not going to go into all the blessings. They're in chapter 49. I got 49. Well, maybe I'll go over them real quick. Okay. So he says to Reuben, he says, you are my firstborn, right? But you're unstable. So he went into his father's concubine. And so the blessing of Reuben is not so good. And then Simeon and Levi, not so good. They're the ones who went into Shechem with the Dinah incident. So once again, their self-will and cursed be their anger. So there again. So three of the 12 tribes are not blessed. Well, we must bless Israel. Okay. But just look at this. This is what really happened. These are the words of the Bible. We must bless every nation. And Israel is one of those. And Judah, here we go. This is an interesting one. It says, your hand shall be on the neck of your enemy. So we're in Genesis 49. And your father's children shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He bows down. He lies down like as a lion. As a lion he shall, and the scepter shall not depart from the lawgiver until Shiloh comes. What does that mean? Judah is the tribe of Judah. So Jesus is the lion of the tribe of Judah, it says in Revelation. So this is the prophecy of that. Because I was chewing on this morning, because I do believe in what's called an open timeline. I don't believe in open theism. That's a whole other theological discussion. But I do believe that there's choices, that God wouldn't give people choices if they didn't have an actual choice. No, I'm sovereign. But Judah was sovereignly chosen to bear Jesus. That's what the scepter is. But the throne, and then when Jesus comes, he's the scepter, isn't he? Or is the scepter Solomon? Why? Why do you say that? For all this time, I thought the scepter was Jesus. It says until the scepter comes, right? But then I realized something. It says the scepter shall not depart from Judah until the lawgiver comes from between his feet until Shiloh comes. So what does that mean? Well, the kingdom departed from Solomon. Solomon was the last king of Israel. So I think that's what it means. The lawgiver is Moses. I don't know. Once again, here we go. Do I understand everything in the Bible? I do not understand. And prophecy is sometimes it's not as straight as people make it sound, right? But the main thing to know about this, here's what I want to say about this. Judah was chosen to produce Christ. So that's one of those things that like Jesus was chosen that Jesus would come and die on the cross. And those things are sovereign. But I think there's still an open timeline. I don't think that King Saul had an option of not falling away and not being the king. I think that was set in stone. But I think God had an option of once Samuel told him he was not going to be the king anymore, King Saul could have taken the good choice and said, okay, that's it. Let's go find a new king because I'd rather go back to my donkeys anyway because I've become a very worldly, evil person in my desire to covet everything, right? But that's not what happened, right? So that's all. That's what I got to say about that. So Judah's is the most important one. That's the reason I didn't want to read them all because a lot of them are pretty bad. Like the first three sons are not. Even though Levi is the priesthood, it says that you're despicable, you're cruel. God's wrath will come upon you. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, So Dan's gonna be. I've waited for your salvation, O Lord. So some of Gad is a troop. I'm not going to go into all that because it's when you get into prophetic language, that's a whole other issue, and we can dig into that someday. But that's a deep issue because prophecy is written in. It's not written in. Although my end timers are not going to like this, what I'm going to say, but it's true. It's called prophetic language. In other words, when it's so, I guess I'll close. I wasn't meaning to close with this, but I guess I'll close with this. Prophetic language is not the same as just what it means, what it says. Prophetic language is it means something else. And how do we know this is true? And this is where the people with the revelation get different views of what it means. And some people say, well, this couldn't possibly have happened already because when did the sky turn and when did the mountains fall and all that stuff in Revelation. And the truth of the matter is prophetic language. There's a really good book called The Apocalypse Code by Hank Hanegraaff, and that might open your mind a little if you have an ability to open your mind on any type stuff. So most people don't. Most people I know that have the other, if they go, we just do what the Bible says. Yeah, we all do that. So anyway, the reason I say you have to watch prophetic language, the honest to goodness, straight, strong reason, with all the things I said, I have no doubt about this. A lot of things that Jeremiah and Isaiah and a lot of the prophets in the Old Testament prophesied about the fall of the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah came true. And their prophecies included that kind of language. The moon shall turn to blood, and the skies will be dark, and the mountains will, and all this kind of language that is not, it's a hyperbolic language, right? So you have to understand the prophetic. That's why I'm not going to read all this to you because I don't feel qualified to go into prophetic messages and what they actually mean and what actually happened. That would be if I spent a few days wondering about it, I could come back and we could go into it. You can do that yourself. You could look up people. That's what I do. I look up my taters, and I would look up somebody like Steve Gregg and see what he says about it. Right, and he's my favorite. So you can do that if you want. I don't spend as much time on that kind of stuff, to be honest with you, because I'm more interested in loving others into God's kingdom and taking the world for Christ and fulfilling His will in my life than I am all the details. But if you want to look up the details of the prophecies, so be it. So then Jacob dies, and he mourns for 70 days. He's embalmed in the Egyptian style. They take him to the tombs of his fathers, and Joseph gets permission to go with them, and he goes with them, and they have this, and they mourn his death. And that's how the book of Genesis ends. The book of Genesis ends. The book of Genesis ends, and then it says, when Joseph was old and he's getting ready to die, he says, promise me that you will carry my bones back to my fathers. In other words, bury my bones in the grave of my fathers. So when he died, he was actually entombed, and it was preserved until the time of Moses. God bless you guys. Ta-ta for now.